It's happening. Twitter has announced it has accepted Elon Musk's roughly $43 billion purchase offer, meaning one of the world's most important social media platforms will now be in the hands of a champion of free speech. Has the antidote to the woke movement in America finally arrived? I'll answer that question in tonight's Hold the Line. Welcome to Hold the Line. I'm Buck Sexton. Fantastic, isn't it? A good day, good couple of weeks here for America. Biden administration's flailing. Poll numbers are absolutely cratering. The economy is showing us that left-wing Marxist lunacy is a bad idea. The American people are waking up to this. We've got the wide open border. People are upset about that. And also, Joe Biden and the Democrats are about to lose the control of one of their favorite toys in the social media space, Twitter. Turns out that Elon Musk will be able to buy this tech platform. Just the richest man in the world. It's a lot of money to be able to throw after something like this. And so he will be able to take Twitter private. Now, this has enormous implications. I want to be clear for everyone watching, even if you're not on Twitter, even if you could care less about Twitter, this is the closest thing that exists to a digital town square where people are able to point out things that are true, untrue, point to their own ideas, where there can be a free exchange of ideas, if only the woke left censor crowd doesn't get to tilt the playing field in their favor all the time, right? This is what has been going on, and it's fantastic to watch this. It really is. Elon now buying Twitter and changing around the rules of the past. So it looks like we might be able to finally say things like mask mandates don't work, because they don't, and because Twitter shut down people like me for months on end for speaking the truth, because the libs at Twitter didn't like it, didn't want people to be able to share ideas that were not part of their phony baloney consensus of Fauci and other idiots like that. Also on election fraud, we're going to be speaking to Dinesh D'Souza later on this program about what he believes he has found when it comes to election fraud. He's got a whole movie about it. Not even allowed to discuss this on Twitter. They will kick you off Twitter for saying you think the election's stolen. And that's after 4 years of us being told that Russia stole the election for Trump. No one was kicked off of Twitter for that. It's a rigged game, a rigged system. But maybe Elon is going to put a stop to that. Possibly. We have to see what he does, but it's looking good when it comes to free speech online. In Elon we trust. There's a number of victories, though, on this front, on the truth and holding the left to account. Governor Ron DeSantis has not backed down an inch after the Disney Corporation, which is trying to back the indoctrination of small children in schools into gender identity, whatever that means in its different forms. And Ron DeSantis is saying, yeah, now that the parental rights in education bill has become a law in the state of Florida, and they've also signed he has signed, the governor, a law that is changing the special status that Disney had. He's like, that's right. That's how we're going to do things now. We fight fire with fire. Watch this.
You're a corporation based in Burbank, California, and you're going to marshal your economic might to attack the parents of my state? We view that as a provocation, and we're going to fight back against that. I would have, signed this bill 3 years ago if it had come to my desk just on basic principles. But I think that partnership that developed early on with Walt Disney, I don't think Walt would appreciate what's going on in this company right now. I'm sorry. And so I think it's appropriate to sign that here today.
Absolutely. You see, there's a whole debate over the fight fire with fire issue on the right that some are trying to push, but the reality is that we've all seen that left-wing woke corporations can count on various government bodies from the local to the state all the way up to the federal to give them advantages and assistance and to reward them for their correct thinking on issues. So if that only goes one way, we will just continue to lose. If we don't actually change the calculation for corporations about whether or not they can do this stuff, in fact, whether they'll benefit from left-wing activism through their government, through their corporate policies and their government liaison work and efforts to spend money on campaign races. And Governor DeSantis understands that, who's with them on this? Even if some corporations are complaining, parents and taxpayers and people who want their kids to no longer be indoctrinated by a machinery that teaches them to hate our country and each other and is divisive and destructive. Here's the governor.
We are not going to use your tax dollars to teach our kids to hate this country or to hate each other. We believe that every single student matters, every single student counts. We are not going to categorize you based on your race. We are not going to tell some kindergartner that they're an oppressor based on their race and what may have happened 100 or 200 years ago. And we're not going to tell other kids that they're oppressed based on their race. Don't let anybody tell you that you can't succeed in this state. Everybody can succeed.
Yeah, the left can get upset about that as much as they want. They can say that Ron DeSantis is a racist and a fascist and a misogynist and think of whatever, the usual slanders and idiocy from people who just don't have good argument, who just aren't convincing, who have poor, weak thinking. You know, they're not intellectually sound in their approach to these issues. And this is why the left has gone too far, and now the correction is coming. Here's Los Angeles Sheriff Villanueva, for example, who's saying, look, wokeism is on the ropes right now. Watch.
And I think 2022 is going to be a special year. I think it's going to be a referendum on a national disease that's going to finally see a cure coming along. Wokeism is on the ropes. Let's put it out of its misery in 22.
He's absolutely right. We will have that opportunity as a country. Of course, the woke diehards are never going to move off their positions, no matter how absurd, no matter how unpopular or unconstitutional with the American people, because for them it's effectively a religion. It's not even just about politics, not just about policy. This is an existential credo for them. This is why they think they exist. And that's why they're going to get so upset when people like me can make our arguments publicly and can gain followers and support without the threat of big tech shutting me or others down. Elon Musk, the new owner, soon to be, of Twitter, put this out on the platform. I hope that even my worst critics remain on Twitter because that is what free speech means. Indeed, that is what free speech means, and it would be such a better place for America to be in for that to be the reality of Twitter going forward. A true digital public square where people can share ideas and thoughts and not be shut down, as Senator Cruz tweeted out. The way this has been going in the past is that Twitter openly censors speech based on political ideologies and makes a mockery of our constitutional liberties. If Elon Musk can turn that around to actually protect free speech, encourage open discourse, Twitter's full potential will be unlocked. And that's, by the way, true financially, politically, culturally. This is the dawning of a new day, my friends, for actual free speech, it seems. All right, coming up, filmmaker and author Dinesh D'Souza takes on voter fraud in his latest documentary, 2,000 Mules. Dinesh is going to join us to give all the details. I want to talk to you for a moment about protecting your online data. A lot of companies promise your privacy is guaranteed, but we know that's not true. That's why you need a new privacy and cybersecurity application tool called Secure. It's spelled S-E-K-U-R. Secure is using proprietary encryption and offering secure instant messaging and email. With Secure, all of your communications based on servers and data centers hosted in Switzerland without using any of the big tech platforms. Privacy is a big issue now. Without real security, people can read your emails, messages, even your bank information. Secure will never mine your data and never ask for your phone number. You can send emails to your doctor, banker, lawyer, or anyone else with total confidence you're not being spied on by your internet provider or big tech. Secure is your solution to stop the constant theft of your digital identity. Only $5 for the messenger, only $10 for the messenger and email combination package. Go to secure.com and take back your privacy today. That's SEKUR.com and use promo code BUCK for 25% off. Author and filmmaker Dinesh D'Souza joins us when we come back. Stay with us. Republicans around the country and former President Donald Trump remain convinced the 2020 presidential election was marred by widespread voter fraud. Although multiple investigations have found fraud and irregularities, most outlets claim there wasn't enough to affect the final results. And in fact, sometimes you're not even allowed to talk about this stuff on social media Our next guest is doing everything in his power to uncover what he believes is the real truth behind the 2020 election and claims of irregularities, to put it mildly. Here's a look at Dinesh D'Souza's upcoming documentary entitled 2,000 Mules. Take a look.
They have ruined Election Day in the United States of America. That's provable. And that's enough for me to fight the left with every fiber in my body.
Without free and fair elections, we are not a democracy. We are a criminal cartel masquerading as a democracy.
2,000 Mules.
Joining me now to discuss this is director Dinesh D'Souza. Dinesh, good to see you.
Hey, Buck, always a pleasure.
Just first up, I wanted to ask you, because the big breaking news today, or at least this afternoon, earlier this afternoon, was that Elon Musk's bid to buy Twitter is going through. You're a guy who's been involved in building platforms, doing alternative media projects, and with considerable success. What do you make of this Elon Twitter development?
Well, it's absolutely huge because there's been a sort of monopoly of these mainstream tech platforms all working for censorship. And Twitter itself just announced just a few days ago that they were going to now add climate change to their sort of menu of censored topics. So the fact that this is going on Facebook, censorship on YouTube, the idea that Elon is pulling in the opposite direction at Twitter, I think is huge. Of course, it's important that he, clean out the board and fumigate the Twitter board and fumigate the place. There's going to be people who say, well, I'm uncomfortable working for Elon Musk. Well, you know what? Show those people the door and clearly institute a free speech policy that, frankly, if it's legal, you should be able to say it.
Yeah, I just think if any of the left-wing blue checks are unhappy, they should build their own Twitter, Dinesh.
Yeah, it's really funny. They've been saying, private companies can do whatever they want. And I think Elon Musk should go, well, there you go. I'm going to do whatever I want. And but what he wants to do is benign. What he wants to do is have real debate, something that has almost disappeared from America, both from television as well as from social media. So this, I think, is a really important development. Of course, we're building important alternative platforms, Truth Social, Getter, and so on. But for one of the mainstream platforms to make a turn like this, I think is a very heartening development for people who love freedom.
All right, now Dinesh, let's talk about speaking of the social media platforms. There are really only a few things you just mentioned that for advertisers, climate change denial will be added to the list, or maybe not anymore, considering Elon's buying Twitter. But that was going to be a new topic. COVID issues, questioning vaccine efficacy, which, as we know, the vaccines were far less effective than were initially told to us by. That's just a matter of fact. The CDC now admits that from a year ago today to where we are now, on election fraud as well. So masks, vaccines, election fraud, very important public issues or issues of public concern. There have been areas shut down. You're looking at the election fraud in 2020. As you know, this gets the left's hair catches on, their blue hair catches on fire instantaneously when you bring this up. The most left-wing radicals lose their minds, and the mainstream Democrat outlets. What can you tell us, Dinesh? What does the movie actually have? What do you have the goods, so to speak?
Well, yes, is the short answer. And the movie doesn't just state it. I mean, there are lots of people who have asserted fraud, who have conjectured fraud, who have suspected fraud. But there hasn't been, as far as I can see, a definitive, beyond a reasonable doubt demonstration, not just of fraud, but of sufficient coordinated fraud in the key swing states of a magnitude enough to change the outcome of the presidential election. And I can guarantee you that in the movie, this is firmly established.
Give me some sense of it, though. I mean, people obviously, I know we want people to see the movie, so you don't have to give us every chapter and verse of everything you have. But, I mean, as you know how it is right now, Dinesh, even a lot of people, at least in the conservative or allegedly conservative media, you bring up election fraud and they just say, oh, it's all baloney. It's all baloney is what you hear from people. Now, I would talk about Pennsylvania changing the laws in violation of the state constitution, the Arizona issues with the ballots and people voting out of the wrong county in Georgia. There's a lot of issues that are real. What are you highlighting here? Like, what did you find that makes you so confident?
Well, let me say, first of all, I have a little sympathy for the people who dismiss it, because what they're saying is we haven't seen the proof. Anomalies are not proof. episodic fraud, a dead guy voting here, a guy who voted and moved out of state over there, that's not enough to tip the balance. And a lot of good work has been done documenting the ways in which the playing field has been unleveled. So there's a movie called Rigged just out, which talks about how Zuckerberg unleveled the playing field. Molly Hemingway has a very good book, in effect saying that what happened at the bank is that they stopped, they told the security guards to take a break, and they turned off the surveillance cameras, and they told the tellers to stop checking signatures. But see, all of that proves that you could rob the bank, but it doesn't really prove that anyone did rob the bank. So, but really what makes our movie different is we're not looking at what could have happened, and we're not looking at anomalies. We are looking at the fraud in the eye. In other words, we're looking at people breaking into the bank. And so that's what I think will settle the issue, is the combination of the geo-tracking evidence, which is technological evidence, essentially using a digital fingerprint, and on the other hand, video evidence, and you put the two together, I don't think you can walk out of that movie. Any liberal who sees this movie will walk out of it profoundly shaken.
What are the responses or the criticisms that everyone should, you want people to see the movie, I'll go see the movie, Dinesh, but as you know, there's always, the attack line is ready for any of this stuff. So what, like, for example, I'm assuming you're going to have people, just based on the trailer that we had there, you're going to have people who are putting large amounts of ballots into ballot boxes, right? And what people are going to say is, well, is ballot harvesting even illegal in that state? How do you know that's not just a ballot worker who was, running behind schedule? I mean, I think it's important to prepare people for what the responses will be as well to a documentary like this. So what can you tell us about that angle?
Well, I mean, I can just tell you that every conceivable objection, we have sort of been there. Now, we can't, in fairness, address them all in the movie. Recently, for example, Philip Bump of the Washington Post, who's one of the few kind of mainstream leftists to kind of try and take this case on the merits. And what he does is he says, for example, he makes 2 points. One is he goes, yeah, you've got this geo-tracking, but he goes, geo-tracking is only accurate to roughly around 30 feet. So if some guy walks past a Dropbox to go to, say, a library, the geo-tracking is going to wrongly say, well, he stopped at the Dropbox. And I should say that this is actually this is like talking about, GPS circa 2002, because it is true that in the early stages, geo-tracking like GPS was not so accurate. But today, GPS, first of all, is very accurate, and geo-tracking now is accurate to 12 to 18 inches. So the simple fact is, if some guy walks past a Dropbox, the geo-tracking will show a line of a guy walking not to a Dropbox, but by a Dropbox. On the other hand, what this geo-tracking shows is a line walking to the Dropbox, back to the car, onto the next Dropbox, back to the car, onto the next Dropbox, back to the car. So what I'm saying is that technologically, this is not a valid objection. The other point that Philip Bump makes, which is worth considering, is he goes, well, what if all these were legal votes that were merely illegally delivered? And this is actually a key point, because when you said that vote harvesting is legal in some states, and indeed it is, in California, for example, you're allowed to give your ballot to anyone and tell them to go take it and drop it off. But I want to make it really clear, in no state in the country is it legal for left-wing nonprofit organizations to become vote stash houses and collect hundreds, if not thousands, of ballots and pay operatives called mules to deliver them. That is illegal in every single state, and the votes delivered thereby are automatically illegal.
Dinesh, where do people go to see it, myself included?
The website is 2000mules.com. It's playing in 300 theaters on 2 days next week. There's a virtual premiere. It's going to be available for digital download. You can buy DVDs. So all the various options. And by the way, we're putting the movie only on uncancelable platforms. All the different ways you can see the movie are on the website, and you can buy tickets right there. 2000mules.com is the place to go.
Dinesh, thanks so much.
My pleasure.
For a moment, let's talk about protecting your home. Look, you know me, I'm skeptical. So when I heard that home title theft online can actually steal the legal title of your home, I thought that's not possible, but turns out it is. It's actually really common. The FBI says it's a rapidly growing crime. And guess what? You're not covered by homeowners insurance or common identity theft program. Home Title Lock is what you need. It puts a barrier around your home's title. The instant they detect anyone tampering with their home's title, they mobilize to help shut it down. Here's what I urge you to do. Number one, go to HomeTitleLock.com. Read the testimonials from FBI agents and government officials. Number two, register your home address to see if you're already a victim and don't even know it. When you protect your home, tell them Buck Sexton sent you for my listener discount. Go to HomeTitleLock.com. Again, that's HomeTitleLock.com. We'll be right back with more. Hold the line. President Biden continues to claim he knew nothing about his son Hunter's overseas business dealings, but visitor logs from the White House of former President Barack Obama may tell a different story. So what did Joe really know? Well, let's dive into this in a Buck Brief. You got to understand, this is all about protecting Joe Biden, the Democrat apparatus, the regime. They know that Hunter Biden is a total screw-up. I mean, that's obvious. And there's some really unseemly stuff about this guy that's not even really worth talking about. But you look at the corruption and the money changing hands here while his dad was vice president. You look at somebody who now is supposedly getting $50,000 of painting from unknown buyers. That's not that hard. All you have to do is someone calls them and says, hey, I'll buy a painting. I want a meeting with your dad. How do you ever trace that? How do you ever know? Right? So easy for these things to happen. And we know that the Democrats were incredibly interested in all aspects of the Trump family business when Donald Trump was president. Oh, Trump's ownership of a hotel in D.C. There are diplomats who have cheeseburgers at the bar at the Trump hotel. They're buying foreign policy. This was the Washington Post writing stuff about that. The emoluments clause we would hear about all the time, right? Oh, yes, the emoluments clause. That's going to get Trump out of office. Well, there's more that keeps piling up here about the Hunter Biden saga. According to the New York Post, Hunter's closest business partner, Eric Schwerin, made at least 19 visits to the White House and other official locations between 2009 and 2015. This included a sit-down with then Vice President Joe Biden in the West Wing. Now, let me tell you, I've been to the White House a few times. 19 visits to the White House? Yes, over a 6-year period, but that's a lot of access. Hunter's close buddy here, Eric Schwerin, you ever heard of him before? No, probably not. Why would he be in a position to get a one-on-one sit-down with then Vice President Joe Biden in the West Wing? Well, let's just take a step back for a second. Remember that it was actually Vice President Biden who, toward the latter part of the Obama presidency, was in charge of the Ukraine portfolio. He was the point man for the Obama administration in Ukraine, which became a corrupt playground for influence peddling and selling of all kinds, including the Burisma natural gas company of Ukraine that was paying Hunter Biden somewhere between $50,000 and $80,000 a month. And then, as we know as well, there were Chinese businesses that wanted to and did, in fact, end up giving Hunter Biden millions of dollars. Who would give Hunter Biden money for anything other than access to dad and the Democrat cronies around him who had power at the time? We all understand what's going on here. But now we have to start peeling away the layers of lies, because we are reminded of the fact that Joe Biden very clearly and on the record says he has never spoken to his son about any of his overseas business dealings. Watch this this is back in 2019.
Mr. Vice President, how many times have you ever spoken to your son about his overseas business dealings?
I've never spoken to my son about his overseas business dealings.
And so how do you
Let's talk
know?
about, here's what I know. I know Trump deserves to be investigated.
That's interesting. Trump deserves to be investigated, which he was a lot. And there were, in fact, no criminal charges against Donald Trump of any kind. There was nobody in his organization that they could nail. They tried so hard. Meanwhile, Hunter Biden is currently the subject of a federal criminal investigation in Delaware. We know that Hunter didn't register under FARA, and that's a crime, at least under the Trump administration it was, one that people were prosecuted for pretty vigorously. So we know he didn't register. So there's no way that, and he was clearly a foreign agent, so he's guilty of that. Will they hold him to account for it? Probably not. We know that he was getting paid millions of dollars and going to LLCs, and he didn't pay his full tax bill because he already paid $1 million of back taxes. So that's also a matter of established fact at this point. Will they bring a federal criminal indictment for tax evasion? Which, if you're getting money from Chinese businessmen into accounts that you own and control and not telling the IRS about those accounts, pretending that they don't exist, yeah, that's tax evasion. That gets normal people in a whole lot of trouble. But the part of this that we really have to know is, what did Joe Biden know and when did he know it? Because the wall between Joe and Hunter, that's the final readout, if you will. That is the Alamo for the libs. They will fight to the last on that one, because Joe Biden's the president. He's supposed to deliver for them, right? Joe Biden's making judicial nominations. He's what prevents Republicans from getting any actual legislation done, even if they win the midterms. Joe Biden's the president. He's a very powerful, important person to the Democrats, even though he's senile and incompetent and buffoonish. Doesn't matter. They're going to defend him. But let's look at what we've been told and what we know right now. Joe Biden says he never spoke to his son about overseas business dealings. That's interesting, because Eric Schwerin, Joe Biden's closest business partner at Rosemont Seneca, which is now shut down, made 19 visits to the White House and had an official sit-down with Vice President Joe Biden. Does anybody really believe that Hunter's closest business partner for overseas shady dealings got a sit-down in the White House with then Vice President Biden, and Biden had no idea what this was all about? Just, what, was this a photo op? 19 photo ops? That's a lot of photos of Biden and other Obama administration officials. Now, we are going to see more and more of this, smoke screens, efforts to divert from this, efforts to convince people that, sorry, there's nothing here. They're lying to you. You know it, and I know it. Hunter Biden, folks, could be the Achilles heel for a Biden administration that cannot afford any more political problems. Secretaries of State Antony Blinken and Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin were in Kyiv this weekend, pledging additional military aid to help in the nation's fight against Russia's invasion. We're going to have more on that with the director of the Heritage Foundation's Margaret Thatcher Center for Freedom, Niall Gardner, when we come back. Today marks the beginning of the third month of Russia's invasion of Ukraine, as the U.S. says they believe Ukraine will win the war and is committed to helping them do so. Secretary of State Antony Blinken and Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin made an unannounced trip to Kyiv yesterday, where they met with Ukrainian President Zelensky in a show of solidarity.
When it comes to Russia's war aims, Russia is failing, Ukraine is succeeding. Russia has sought as its principal aim to totally subjugate Ukraine, to take away its sovereignty, to take away its independence. That has failed.
In terms of their ability to win, the first step in winning is believing that you can win. And so they believe that we can win. We believe that we can win. They can win if they have the right equipment, the right support. And we're going to do everything we can, continue to do everything we can to ensure that that gets there.
Joining me now to discuss, Director of the Heritage Foundation's Margaret Thatcher Center for Freedom, Niall Gardner. Niall, good to have you back.
Great to be here. Thanks very much, Buck.
Just first, what do you think about this assessment from Blinken and Lloyd Austin on Russia's not winning, Ukraine can win? How do you view this?
Well, I have to say that this war has gone very badly for the Russians, and without a doubt, I think that the Russian war machine has encountered huge obstacles, huge difficulties here in many respects. So this has been a disastrous military operation for the Russians, and in fact, the British Defense Secretary Ben Wallace today was talking about 15,000 Russian military personnel killed in action in Ukraine, and that's a staggeringly high number. Also, the British are saying that 25% of Russia's military capacity or combat capacity in Ukraine is basically non-operational. So in every respect, I do think the campaign's gone very badly for the Russians. There is, though, of course, no room for complacency, and I don't think there is complacency, here in Washington or in Great Britain, or indeed in Ukraine. And the Russians still have a large number of troops available and on the battlefield. the Russians are determined, of course, to create a sort of land corridor in the south and east of the country. And the Ukrainians, of course, are continuing to fight with the courage of lions, basically, against the Russian war machine. We have to do everything possible in order to support Ukraine to win this war. But without a doubt, yes, I mean, I do think that the Russians are staring defeat in the face, and we have to help ensure that that actually happens.
Just hours, Niall, after top U.S. officials, Blinken, Secretary of State, Austin, the Secretary of Defense, met with President Zelensky, Moscow sent a flurry of attacks hitting 5 main train stations in central and western Ukraine. Do you think that that was at some level just a direct retaliation for propaganda purposes? Essentially, they can have all the meetings we want, but we're still calling the shots?
Yeah, I think that's part of it, of course. And as you mentioned, the Russians launched a series of missile strikes against sort of railway hubs and facilities. I think that they were both propaganda strikes, but also strikes aimed at, reducing the flow of, Western or NATO weapons flowing into Ukraine. So it served a dual purpose. But but again, I mean, the reality here is the Russians are reduced to launching, missile strikes. They have not taken much territory inside Ukraine, and so the use of missile strikes is increasingly a tactic that they are using, and of course the Russians have no concern whatsoever for civilian casualties. They've killed a large number of Ukrainian civilians, including women and children. They will continue, I think, to do so because they have no concern whatsoever for human life in Ukraine. Russia will continue to launch, the kinds of missile strikes that are going to, kill civilians indiscriminately. And so I think we're going to see that continuing here. On the subject of, Blinken and Austin, traveling to Kiev, I mean, and this certainly sent an important message. But at the same time, I have to say that, the Biden administration, they're very slow to move here. I mean, you've had, of course, the British Prime Minister on the ground in Ukraine nearly a month ago. You've had a large number of European officials actually visiting Kyiv over the course of the last few weeks. And the Biden administration is now, sort of catching up on that front. It's good that you see senior U.S. officials on the ground in Kyiv, but it's a lot slower actually than the leadership that you've seen from from the British and from some others as well on the world stage.
Dmitry Polyansky, Russia's deputy ambassador to the UN, gave his assessment of Blinken's, our Secretary of State's, assessment of the war. Here's how that went.
I don't think we failed, frankly. We conduct our military operation. It's not a war. It's a military operation. It has its own strategy. It has its own aims. It was never meant as a blitzkrieg. I don't know. It was something that Secretary Blinken maybe was imagining. And it's really very difficult to comment on Secretary Blinken's remarks because they are very contradictory.
So let's just put aside whether or not it was intended as a blitzkrieg. It certainly looked like they were going for Kyiv in the early days and then were turned back. But what is the Russian aim now as it's playing out on the ground in Ukraine? What are they trying to accomplish?
Yeah, I do think the Russian aims are significantly more limited now. And the reality is the Russians did have a plan to take the capital city of Kyiv. They thought the government would collapse in a matter of days. And of course, the Russians have been absolutely humiliated. And, their campaign against Kyiv was a spectacular failure. And they underestimated, of course, the strength and resolve of the Ukrainians. I think in terms of Russia's, goal now, I mean, they want to sort of consolidate their position in both the south and east of the country. They want to, emphatically take the Donbass region. They want to build a land corridor to Crimea. Basically, those are their goals now, far more limited. But even with these limited goals, and I do think the Russians, could well be heading for more failures and more defeats. And this, of course, is very dependent upon continuing to send the Ukrainians all of the defensive weapons that they need in order to win against the Russians. I think there's very low morale actually within the Russian military. They've taken very heavy casualties here. And this is a war that, in many respects, has been a disaster for Putin. It's also actually, I think, strengthened and solidified the NATO alliance. It's also resulting in the expansion of the NATO alliance, certainly to include, Finland and Sweden, I think, eventually. And so, everything's backfiring for Putin here. So their goals are very modest and limited right now. Our goal should be to ensure that the Russians, suffer, more defeats on the battlefield in Ukraine, and that their military is degraded to an extent where they can't, launch these kinds of invasions again.
We just have about a minute, and I want to know what you think of Sweden and Finland reportedly agreeing to submit applications to NATO. Are they going to go through, and is that a big deal?
Yeah, I think it's a big deal. I think they will go through. I think the NATO alliance will be, unanimously in support of both of those applications. And I expect that by the end of the year, both Finland and Sweden will be full members of the NATO alliance. So this is a big slap in the face for Putin. This is the result of his foolish operation against Ukraine, the expansion of the NATO alliance. And I think that NATO will be stronger and more unified and more effective as a result of Finland and Sweden joining the alliance later in the year. I'm sure that's definitely going to happen, and this will be a strategic setback, of course, for Russian, ambitions.
Thanks so much for being with us, Niall. Good to see you.
Great to see you, Buck. Thank you very much.
Washington Post writer Taylor Lorenz has a pretty strange excuse for doxing the woman behind the popular LIBS of TikTok Twitter account and TikTok account, obviously. We have the video in Quick Hits coming up. Stay with us. The Washington Post, Taylor Lorenz makes some just laughable excuses for doxing the woman behind a popular social media account, LIBS of TikTok. And Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene has a fantastic response when asked about the term 1776. Got those stories in Quick Hits. Let's get right to it. Look, if you're going to be a journalist who makes a scene and makes a big show of herself as somebody who wants to oppose online bullying, has been someone who has suffered from online bullying, a good rule of thumb would be don't then make a big effort to online bully and dox and ruin the lives of everyday folk, people who are not necessarily themselves public figures, even if sometimes they do engage in public discourse, which we kind of all do by being on social media in some ways. The Washington Post, Taylor Lorenz, has gotten a lot of heat from the right, to be sure. The left backs her up, even though they know that this is absurd. But she's a warrior for their cause, for the destruction of people that step out of line by letting the American people find out what the left actually thinks. That's the crime of the LIBS of TikTok creator, the so-called crime, if you will. And Taylor Lorenz is saying, look, she had to reveal who this person was, because what if they were a foreign actor? It could have been like Russia. Watch.
I think it's rare to see an account gain so much prominence so quickly and be shaping these narratives in such an effective way, especially against trans people. My story was kind of long, but I really wanted to make the case like why this account mattered. And I think it's incredibly important, as someone that covers the influencer industry, to know who is exerting influence in this way. For all we knew, this could have been a foreign actor, right?
A foreign actor. So what does that even mean? But notice, gotta go back to the ingrained hysteria of LIBS because of Russia-Trump collusion. Now they're angry about Russia for the war, more so, but they still remember what the Russia-Trump collusion storyline was. Foreign interference in our discourse, in our elections, foreign interference in our democracy. So, look, no one believes that. No one thinks that that's a serious argument here. Look, they wanted to make an example of somebody for embarrassing the left and the Democrat Party that pretends that the left is not actually running the show, which it is. Marjorie Taylor Greene, she's been in court recently because in her state of Georgia, there are people who are trying to use the law and claim that because she took part in the insurrection, she should not be allowed. She's a sitting member of Congress, should not be allowed to run for re-election, to give you a sense of how much they're coming after her. Well, here she is giving a brilliant response when an attorney in the case challenging her candidacy implies the term 1776 means violence. Watch this one.
And you know that the term 1776 is actually a term that's sometimes used in politics today.
I don't know if you've noticed our state seal here in Georgia. I know you're not from Georgia, but as you can see, we enjoy our history and we're proud of our freedoms. 1776 is on our state seal.
Great. And it's also a term that's used in political discourse in America today.
I don't use it as a term of violence.
They're trying to say, oh, you said 1776. Violence you're calling for. She says literally behind her in the court on the state seal is 1776. Yeah, good luck with that one. Biden says, oh yeah, because he's got to appeal to the left-wing Green New Deal radicals. It's going to start the process where every vehicle in the United States military is going to be climate-friendly. Watch.
One of the things I've found out as the President of the United States, I get to spend a lot of that money. I get to decide where, no, I'm not joking. And we're going to completely, but before, we're going to start the process where every vehicle in the United States military, every vehicle is going to be climate friendly. Every vehicle. We're going to have no, I mean it. We're spending billions of dollars to do it.
No, I mean it. No joke. No, I mean it. This is Joe Biden, guys, unbelievable. Every vehicle in the United States military is going to be, you know, that's. There's the biggest war in Europe since World War II going on, and Biden is his main concern is what's the CO2 footprint of our military vehicles? You know, you mock the libs, but you're also at some level frightened by the fact that people that are that dumb can be in charge of such a massively powerful government and military apparatus. It's pretty stunning. Santa Rosa County, Florida Sheriff, that was a lot, Bob Johnson had some thoughts about people breaking into your house. Watch this one.
7 charges total. His bond's $157,500. And I want to say, as to the person, we don't know which homeowner shot at him. I guess they think that they did something wrong, which they did not. If somebody's breaking in your house, you're more than welcome to shoot them in Santa Rosa County. We prefer that you do, actually. So whoever that was, you're not in trouble. Come see us.
Libs don't like that one either, I'm sure. Defending your home. That's it for tonight's Hold the Line. The No Spin News with Bill O'Reilly is next. Shields high.